Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Bourbon Bytes with Cape Endeavors. I'm your host, Terry McGraw, and today I am very blessed to have the great Rebecca Taylor with us. I am very proud to say that not only a colleague, but a dear friend out of the UK. Rebecca, before we just sort of jump in, I want to frame this for the audience. So you are a threat intelligence knowledge manager. You are a threat researcher. You are a public speaker, an author, a mentor, coach, network specialist. You're also a mother and a wife, and not in those priority orders, of course, but clearly you are incredibly accomplished. And so thank you. I appreciate you joining us.
No, it's magic to be here, and I'm absolutely chuffed. You know that you've been my friend for the longest time. You've made huge differences to my career in various ways. So I feel very lucky that you've asked me to come and spend some time with you.
Well, given where you've arrived, I take that as a very lofty compliment. So, I can't open LinkedIn and not see you getting another award from some organization. So it's very impressive. But in truth, I knew you could do it. But let's talk about your journey. Your journey to where you are as a threat researcher. And I should remark that you are now also doing human intelligence of the dark web. Where you started, I think you were creative writing, and you have a very long and not necessarily a direct path to where you've been. And truthfully, in my career, I have found that some of the most brilliant people in cybersecurity and cyber research came from non-cyber backgrounds. So can you give us a little insights to your journey and how you kind of came from there to here?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I started as an English and creative writing student. I went to the University of Portsmouth, which again is in the UK. And I left university not really knowing where I should go or what I should be. I think at the time I was torn or encouraged to either become a teacher or a child psychologist, which is quite interesting now considering the work that I'm in. But in essence, I was working in washing machine insurance when I was headhunted by what was SecureWorks.
Is there such a thing? I did not know that was a real thing.
Yeah, that is a real thing. And there I was selling insurance on washing machines and fridges, I should say, when I was headhunted by SecureWorks, who have recently been acquired by Sophos, to come and join as a personal assistant. And I seized the opportunity because, believe it or not, I did not want to sell washing machine insurance as a career choice. It wasn't the vision. And I knew at the time that cybersecurity was interesting. It was a bit of a hot topic. It felt quite new. We're talking 13 years ago. It felt relatively new as a word and a phrase that I was seeing more and more. So I thought, oh, go on then. I'll give it a go and we'll see what happens when I get there. So I actually met you on my very first day at SecureWorks.
Really?
I did. Yeah. And so I was looking after the general manager, organizing meeting rooms, taking notes, supporting the sales team, that kind of stuff. And it very much was like my eyes had been opened and I could really see the depth and breadth of opportunity. Like what you said, that there was a really diverse set of people from so many different backgrounds. And that actually, if I did work hard and I did put myself out there, that I could be someone and be someone in the cyberspace. So from that role, I did that for 2 years, moved into resource coordination. So that was about talking to customers, understanding their needs and connecting them with an appropriate consultant. From there, I got to, again, get to work with you actually in Incident Command, where I became the first ever Incident Command knowledge manager. So that was being there for those incident commanders during the heat of those cyber fires, but also getting to design the processes and procedures that they would use, the way we collect documentation, how we worked with insurers, all that kind of stuff. And then I moved into the counter threat unit where, as you said, I'm now a threat intelligence knowledge manager and a human intelligence researcher. So quite a different pathway, but one I'm obviously really proud of.
So before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of what you currently do, along that path, just besides being clearly motivated, are there pivotal points? So I guess a part of this I really want, and I know you're very passionate about this, is sort of inspiring others, especially others from diverse backgrounds and especially women in tech. But along that journey, what are the so what are the pivotal moments that helped you along that way?
It's difficult to say. I think mentoring and sponsorship played huge parts. Sponsors getting my name into rooms that maybe I wasn't yet in and advocating for me, helping me find opportunities. Mentors for connecting me to people across industry, people in our own organization that then could lift me up and give me opportunities. I mean, being an instant command came about because someone advocated for me and got me a foot in the door to give it a go while somebody else was on annual leave. And that is now what has given me that depth of experience that I get to do what I do now. I think as well, it's tricky because there's lots of pivotal moments that have happened in my career that have shaped who I've been. I think there have been periods where I've felt quite lonely. I think being a woman and someone that identifies as a woman, I have had different lived experiences and moments, like having to step out onto maternity leave and have my kids. That changed things for me. So that in itself was a pivotal turning point of having people having my back and making sure that when I came back, I was looked after and they understood that I was a different person and that work could be adjusted so that I could still shine, but in a way that was for who I had then become. So there's been lots of special moments, but a lot of it has been through, like I said, mentors, sponsors, and just having good friends that understand, that listen, and that have had my back throughout it all.
Well, and you have some innate capabilities as well. And oh, by the way, I don't actually, I didn't see. I mean, other than everyone who becomes a parent, particularly a mother, balancing that with work is always challenging. But I don't remember ever, and I've known you for a very long time. I don't ever remember a time where I thought, wow, Rebecca needs to balance. Like you did it flawlessly. So I don't know if it's just you or but I don't remember having any special accommodation. You just sort of just grabbed it by the throat in every role that you've had, and I think that's important because I always say it's an old army saying: "When in charge, take charge." And there's not a single role that you did not take charge of, whether it was from a personal assistant, to the executive assistant, to incident command knowledge manager, into the role that you now currently do in the threat research. I mean, and it's no easy feat to get into threat research. I mean, that is sort of the very lofty air and very respected categories of what we do in the cyber intelligence community, that supports the cybersecurity community. So anyway, my hat's off to you. I've been watching your career for a very long time, and it's rather impressive. I mean, you are proving that you can do multiple hats on a journey. I don't want. I also don't want people to think that they can't do it as well. Like, I mean, yes,
100%.
you're amazing.
You can do it. Yeah, other people can do it. That's why I give back through mentoring now. You can do it, but it's only you that can make it happen. You can seek lots of beautiful advice. You can have fabulous allies, but if you then don't follow through, no one will feed it to you. And that's something I've had to learn. And I think that's why I've kept so motivated. I have lots of documented plans. I have very constructive conversations. I continue to have multiple mentors just because I want to keep nourishing what I know, where I want to go, because your career and your beliefs and where you want to go changes, right, as your life changes. So making sure you're still acknowledging that, you're still motivated, that's what will count. But anyone can do anything. Anyone can be someone in cyber as long as they're willing to push for it and have the motivation and drive to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's true for most things. I think a lot of people have an expectation that someone else needs to give them the opportunity or someone else needs to like support. I mean, I think it's important to have a support network, but no one's going to give you anything. I don't care who you are, right? I mean, you're going to have to work for it, and you have clearly demonstrated to the audience that you can pivot and still lots of pivots and still be very, very successful.
Lots of pivots, yeah.
And I'm not being facetious. I mean, you've gotten a lot of recognition in the industry. You've gotten a lot of very public awards. You've become a public speaker. You've done a TED Talk. You do work in helping cybersecurity education in children, enabling women in tech.
This doesn't feel comfortable.
I know, but I do remember when I first met you. Like, if I knew that you had innate capabilities the minute I met you, that your motivation level was very high. And oh, by the way, as from a leadership perspective, there is no replacement for positive attitude. like negativity is a cancer. It will erode you. It'll erode everyone around you. So positivity is sort of a thing, and you are an incredibly positive person. So I do think that this is about taking ownership of your career, uh, and you've clearly done that. But just pivoting a little bit, I want to save for the very end of our conversation sort of the work you've been doing in sort of mentoring and enablement of different groups. But I wanted to dig into sort of the threat intelligence piece here and the human piece. You had done a presentation and I should back up. I keep saying SecureWorks and the counter threat unit. Sophos is now owner. They acquired SecureWorks and the counter threat unit, so it's really the counter threat unit of Sophos. And the research there are some of the best in the industry. They really are. And some of the insights are very unique and leveraged by nation states, I might add. I mean, the UK government, the US government, Australian government often use the work products that you all developed, and so it's a very high bar. But you've kind of recently, in the last couple of years, got into the human part of this in the dark web, and I wanted you to sort of elaborate for the audience, sort of things that you found surprising when you got in there. Like you started doing research on the dark web. Most folks have never been to the dark web, right? I mean, like
very true.
Thing we see on Hollywood, and no one's gone. I remember I always give an annual talk on sort of the economy of e-crime and the dark web, and so give us your thoughts. Like what was unique and fascinating about human intelligence for the dark web?
I think that's what you said makes me smile, because there is this vision that dark web, like I must go into my dark room with my black hoodie and I put my hood up and I sit there and I type really quickly and like whizzy things come up. It's not quite like that. The dark web for me, and I hope no one is on it that shouldn't be on it that's listening to this, it's a very interesting space because in lots of ways it's a community. Whilst there are people in there up to no good, selling things they shouldn't, leaking databases, all those kind of things that you read about in the media, there is also a community sense to it where people are checking in with each other, where there are forms of digital friendships or camaraderie, where they're talking about their favourite films, or have you listened to the latest album by whoever, sharing their favourite music videos. And I think that's what took me aback first when I first went in there, because I did think it would just be this consistently malicious, toxic type environment. I didn't expect to see people being close and talking about how they feel and emotions and the personal side. I suppose that's what threw me slightly, because again, I think we often forget that whilst we could be talking about, I don't know, a big nation state threat actor or a cyber criminal, behind that is a human being and a person. And often in the dark web, you start to see the human sides and the human behaviors in the way they talk, behave, what interests them. And that's what's probably thrown me the most. I'd suggest the other thing that still continues to surprise me is just the sheer volume. And I don't know if it's surprise or disappointment, but the sheer volume of access available of stealer logs baffles me. Over 10 million last time I checked. And that's just a staggering number to know that it's just readily available, that people with the right capabilities can go in and view, purchase, do what they want with. And yeah, it just shows that kind of problem isn't going away, that people maybe still aren't doing what they should be doing, being careful of their credentials, multi-factor authentication, all that kind of stuff. It's just so readily available and it's a few clicks away. That I still find really surprising.
Yeah, we're certainly still not being brilliant to the basics. I talk about the threat landscape, probably 12 times a year to public audiences, and the initial aspect vectors are the same for the last 20 years. It's just staggering to me. But it is interesting about the community aspect of the dark web that you're talking about, and maybe it's unique to cyber. And I'll get your thoughts on this. It seems like though that there's a thin veil of banality, right? There is community, there is chat, there's checking up on one another, but maybe it's unique to cyber where you can do some really heinous shit to people, but it's abstract, right? I mean, you don't physically see the damage to someone loses their job or someone loses their business or someone loses their data. My mom, lost her life savings to cyber criminals. It's real impact to people, but in that veneer of banality where everyone's kind of a community and they're checking up, they're still doing some evil shit. I mean, so it's kind of that
Yeah.
duality, but unlike physical violence, and the physical manifestation, the kinetic kind of activity, you kind of can remain abstract, in the cyber world. And so I think, do you see that? And B, do you think that's why more people are willing to participate in the cybercrime activities because of that layer of abstraction that they don't really have to see
Yeah.
their victims?
I think the anonymity and the abstraction, like you said, can be encouraging in a way. People behave in certain ways, use certain types of language because they feel almost one step removed from the reality of what they're doing. I think it's in the same way if you compare it to, I don't know, something like online bullying, where children are maybe saying mean things to each other online, but because they have that barrier and it's done in a virtual space as opposed to face, to them seeing the victim, it can almost sometimes not feel as real or as cruel, because, yeah, you're not actually living it. It's just something that's happening. It's the anonymity, I think, does play a part in why people are behaving the way they are. I think that we're seeing a real mixture of individuals come through because they can have that virtual space. They can access these dark web spaces whenever they want to, as long as they have the right technologies and capabilities. And then therefore they can talk to people, they can connect with people they otherwise wouldn't do. And so it sets off this whole set of unusual behaviors with the nice kind of stuff, like I said, where people are sharing their favorite films, but with vulgar conversation by calling each other terrible names, doxing, sharing information about, I don't know, other threat actors or personas' home addresses or where their parents live, sharing inappropriate images, all sorts. There's such a thin line between the higher level conversations and then going into some dark, troubling stuff.
And I should say, and I misspoke earlier when I meant I meant benign, not banality, because the banality is part of the dark web. And the benign portion is that thin veneer. But I mean, they call it a dark web for a reason. There's a lot of really heinous stuff that's readily available, and I also likened it to an underground market. I think that when I've looked at the aspects of the dark web over time, it used to be that threat actors and threat actor groups had to do everything themselves, from the developing software to the techniques to the monetary exchange. But what we've seen is a development of an actual market where you have resellers and producers of Ransomware-as-a-Service and software service, infrastructure service. All the cloud provisioning you would see, or SaaS provisioning you'd see, is available for evil outcomes, modifying legitimate tools towards evil purpose. Then you have your initial access brokers, people that are really good at social engineering or getting in through illicit exploit or phishing, and then you've got sort of those affiliate groups. But there is an exchange that's going on, and it offers a little bit of fungibility. Do you still see that? Are there aspects of that
Oh,
that
yeah.
really drive you?
It's an elaborate shopping experience. Like you said, you can go in and pretty much find whatever you want. There's different dark web spaces and underground forums depending on what you're looking for, whether that is initial access to somewhere or a compromised credential, obviously all the way through to other types of crime like drugs and guns and those kinds of things. There's different spaces for each thing. But you can fundamentally go into this underground forums and find the accesses, find the ransomware, find people you could recruit and work with, find a new job, because there's a lot of advertisements for collaboration and work that are available in these spaces, adapted malware, all sorts. It's readily available. And one other thing I wanted to just throw in as well, just related to what we spoke about previously about the dark web, is that I think it's felt restricted to this dark web space is where you'd go to have these conversations. But actually what I'm seeing more and more is these filter now out into more mainstream places. So for example, on certain social media platforms, I won't drop names, but you can go in and you see the threat.
Some of them are pretty freaking heinous as far as I'm concerned.
You can see threat actors talking comfortably in these spaces about what they're doing, posting about it, sharing about it. And so that in itself is promoting the conversation, promoting others that maybe aren't in underground spaces to go and have a look and try it out. In the same way, Telegram is now readily used. You can join and follow so many different communities and conversations, some lovely and some obviously negative and related to dark web and crime and cybercrime and all those kinds of things. So I think dark web is now starting to bubble up, whereas before it was limited to maybe that space and having to go down, whereas now it's available far more easily.
That's an excellent point. I was recently involved in a court case revolving around this very topic, and the encryption capabilities of these chat and direct messaging platforms has gotten to the point where it's bulletproof against even nation states, right? And so, the argument is when nation states try to figure out a way to go around it for legitimate law enforcement, for protecting the population. I realize there's a privacy concern versus public good, but as you've noted, besides just sort of the benign conversations, there is heinous activity happening on these legitimate public platforms, and because of the encryption, I mean, WhatsApp brags that they can't even view their own stuff, right? I mean, because it's so well encrypted. That's a double-edged sword, and the sword cuts really deep in the negative way, right? Just if I want to have a proper conversation with my mom, that's fine, but we're allowing child traffickers, human traffickers, terrorism, all kinds of just really, really ugly stuff is being protected under that privacy veil. Thoughts on that? I mean, the UK seems to have a lot of challenges in this regard right now. So I wanted to sort of see where you're at.
Yeah, it's like you said. If I think of it on a personal level, I use WhatsApp. I use it to communicate with my family, to send pictures of my children to my mum, and it works quite well. And I'm quite pleased that nobody else can see it and that it's between me and her. But it does make cybercrime, the work of law enforcement, arrests, that little bit more challenging. If we then take it beyond those sort of communication functions, again, using social media apps where, for example, you can take a photo or share a piece of information and it deletes after a certain amount of time.
Right.
It just makes everything harder, whether that be to prove, whether that be to piece together a story as to what has actually happened or to bring justice for the victims of those crimes. It's making life more complicated, but I don't have the answer on how we fix that.
Right.
Because like you said, it's a double-edged sword.
If it was easy, we would have done it already.
Yeah, we would have sorted it by now.
The most intractable problems. But I want to go back to the dark web just a little bit before I pivot yet again. And I what I don't think most folks understand is there are like manners to find information, and I don't want to give a roadmap to idiots. But how in a general sense would one even navigate the dark web? I mean, like, so how do the bad actors find the forums that they want to advertise on? Like, how do the interest categories, ransomware-as-a-service versus initial access brokers versus snuff films? They're all there, right? So how would one do that, or is it now part of the outer web and then the dark web?
So again, without obviously going into weeds, because like you said, we don't want to give too much away.
Right.
You can see obviously a lot of dark web links, Tor sites are searchable, are being spoken about, for example, on social media platforms. Can be shared through word of mouth. I've seen them shared through gaming, with others encouraging their friends to come and join me on here. Because again, a lot of these underground forums and these dark web sites, a lot of the source of those people joining is from gaming spaces, because there are specific areas where you can find the cheats and you can be naughty and share things you've maybe taken from other people, but gaming plays a big part. So I would suggest there are a lot of the big ways. And then when you're in one, it's quite easy to pivot through to others. Personas will typically have footprints across multiple forums. They don't tend to just stick to one. They may use the same name across everything. They may switch it up and change it, depending on where they go. And you can just simply view and go in a lot of them and just have a look around, or you can actually sign up and join and be part of these communities. And then there's multiple channels which you can go through to look for whatever it is that you're looking for. So maybe you are looking to discuss a game and get some cheats, in which case you could just focus in that area. Or you could obviously start to go down a different pathway, go into specific channels. I don't know, for database dumps, where people are selling access, where people are selling malware, whatever it is, you can work your way through. And obviously beyond that, a lot of the posts and the personas in there will again link out to different spaces. So whilst you might be able to go to the marketplace side of something and look at these channels, you might then be able to pivot from there to the chat space, which may be in something like Telegram. And that's when you'll get that live feed of people talking and sharing. And that's again where we're seeing a lot of, particularly a lot of the malicious stuff and the malicious conversations taking place that have been in the press a lot this year with groups like the Com and Scattered Lapsus.
Right. It's interesting. Just to give the audience a feel for how severe some of this stuff really is. I remember giving a talk at Black Hat probably 5 or 6 years ago, and one of your team members provided me some screenshots I could use, and I found one where literally there was an initial access broker selling access to a nuclear regulatory agency in a foreign government, and that's terrifying, right? I mean, that means someone got in, they had the proof of life, they were selling access to a nation state's nuclear regulatory agency. I mean, like it's not, again, I mean, it's a wide range of just like compromising a company to significant activity that compromises agencies across governments.
Very much so. But that's what's interesting as well, is there are, in some of these spaces, there are almost moral codes. So as an example, if someone tried to sell access to a hospital or a school, you might find that that's quite frowned upon, that their post is removed, because there are administrators and people that regulate these spaces, because typically you don't go for those kinds of spaces or where children are involved. There's other areas you might go for that. But in typical the spaces where I am, which is cyber focused, that kind of stuff isn't allowed and is frowned upon. In the same way, if you were sharing access to, if it was a Russian forum and you were trying to sell access to a Russian organization, that again might be removed because you don't tend to go for your own.
Yes. And Mr. Putin let you and your family disappear because of it. Yes.
So there are moral codes which do guide what is and isn't allowed in some of these spaces, and it does come into play quite regularly.
I guess that's true. There's levels of depravity, right? So it's okay to.
It's not me saying they're all nice.
Yeah. So it's okay to just destroy a business if they're only selling manufacturing, but we're gonna protect an elementary school. I'm glad that there are some lines that people don't want to cross. But it's a very small step from crushing someone's livelihood to affecting the family in the hospitals. But people do it. I mean, hospitals get shellacked all the time. So at least we've seen that in local community hospitals where ransomware shuts the whole operation. I know the UK has suffered from that as well. So let me pivot a little bit more into sort of your work in something I know you're very passionate about is and I will say for the audience that I think you and I may view diversity inclusion a little bit differently, and I think that in my mind, diversity is a very powerful thing when you're looking for diversity of opinion and views and capabilities and even cultural representation. So long as it's backed by the skills and capabilities of the person that you want on the team. But you've done incredible work in making that reality, right? It's just not lip service. I mean, you've written a book on it. You do podcasts and blogs on it. You do public speaking on it. So for the audience's benefit, how are you participating in that? And I personally, just setting this up, like from the beginning of my professional career, and I know it started in the Army, but like I'm very fond of saying, by the end of my career, almost every one of my bosses was a female. I mean, like General Sue Lawrence, Jen Napper, Mary Legier, Linda Jansen, Claire O'Connor, you had Claire Cuccio, you had Maureen O'Connor, like you, like, I mean, I name all of these people, Alexander Rose. I mean, like the end of my career, like it seems to that women are everywhere in this space now. And you share that opinion or not? I mean, I think it's a great thing but personally, my adult career has been shaped by women in tech. The Wendy Thomas, like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
people who I've intimately worked with, right? So, what do you think on that subject? You've been a big part of promoting it. So
Yeah. So I've been in cyber now for nearly 13 years, believe it or not. And it's changed a lot in the time I've been in it. I would say earlier on in my career, there were points where I felt quite lonely, that I didn't actually see that many women around me. But as time has moved on, I think as more women have taken up STEM options, have pursued cyber careers, I think where organizations have changed the way they work, there's more male allies, all those kinds of things. I feel more women around me. I see more women around me, and I feel that there's a stronger community there now. There's so many groups specifically around women in cyber, women in tech, and they just weren't there 10 years ago. So there's been a lot of positive change in terms of what I do. So as you said, I've mentored my fair share of people during my career for lots of different reasons, but just because mainly I'm very conscious that I'm in a place of privilege and I've been backed and supported, but there are a lot of people out there that aren't, or that feel by themselves and don't know who to go to, or don't have someone to talk to. So that's why I do it. And that's really why Amelia and I created the Cyber Agony Aunts, was because we were getting so many questions, so many people reaching out, typically via LinkedIn, saying, hey, I'm trying to get into this space, or I'm having trouble with my leader, I don't know what to say, or I want to have a baby, but I'm worried how it might reflect on me. So many questions all the time that were always the same. So we decided to condense it and put our book out, which came out in May. And then that led into the podcast, which we've had so much fun with. So the first series was us really just going through the topics in the book.
I expect
And
an
the second
invite
one
to
is
that
interviewing.
podcast at some point. So,
well, when you're in the UK, you know you can come on it. But yeah, this series we've been focusing more on interviewing people and bringing people from all sorts of different backgrounds to show sort of, again, diversity, representation, different types of thought leadership. And then our next series, we're going to be focusing more on resiliency, because that's what the next book will be about. And we're not making a fortune from it. We're not able to like disappear and go and live in the Bahamas. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do and because it helps. And then when you get those messages back where someone feels like they've been seen and heard, and that someone understands what they're going through, that's why we do it.
Well, clearly
I'm very proud of it.
Well, you should be. And clearly these kind of things are making a big difference, because like I said, I can see it visibly, right? And
yeah,
I remember I walked around DEF CON this year, and I'm going to use some stereotypes. Like 10 years ago, DEF CON was like, the nerd in mom's basement, I mean, like very insular. But now I see all kinds of young ladies participate in these groups, and it's and lots and lots of different backgrounds as well, right? And different cultures represented, and I take that as a good sign. I think it's sort of the democratization of technology for the good, right? Finally, we're using the interconnectivity towards enabling people. But if you were going to give some advice, right, and you give advice a lot, I think we should you should list sort of the things that you are directly involved in, that are resources, but in general, resources for young ladies or folks from different backgrounds, to sort of help them get their foot in the door. So what are you participating in personally? You got your cyber.
I participate in WeSys, which is Women in Cybersecurity, and that is a global. I think they're counted as a not-for-profit, but I'm not quite sure. But anyone can join all around the world. And what I like about that group is not only do they do lots of events, but they also have communication channels, WhatsApp channels, so you can talk to people around you and who are, for example, oh, are you going to this next event uptown? And you can buddy up, so you don't have to be, again, by yourself, because that in itself can be intimidating. I do a lot of work with Elevate or HALZAC. So they do mentoring programs that, again, you can sign up to. I've been a mentor there now. I think I've done it 3 years on the trot. just because you get to meet so many awesome people, lots of free training. I participate in a lot of SANS communications and conferences because, again, I just think they're a fantastic training provider and I enjoy what they put out there. And then the Cyber Agony Aunts, we're at the end of an email, and we have got your back. You don't have to be by yourself if you do have a question. Even if you don't want to contact Cyber Agony Aunts, you can message me on LinkedIn, but just don't be a stranger and don't do it by yourself.
I love how that grew completely organically from your mentoring. Can a guy like me participate? Can I be a mentor?
100%. Yes.
Like if I wanted to support the community, would I be welcome to do so?
Yes.
Because I believe that I go out of my way, but this is delusional. It could be delusional. I really do try to view opportunities to mentor everyone, irrespective of where they come from.
Exactly that. And again, even if I think about the people that I mentor, they're not all women. I mentor lots of different people, right from those that are considering picking STEM subjects at A levels in the UK, right the way up to uni graduates, all the way through to existing professionals across lots of different fields and people transitioning in of all genders and backgrounds from all around the world. Because it's the right thing to do and it's important to help. And that's what empowers people to go on and do magical things. So if you are listening and you want to be a mentor, do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I was really trying to hit on that point. I wanted you to say it, not me, because you add legitimacy to it. But I do think it's important for everyone who's kind of in that leadership or managerial roles, or even just sort of a thought leader, to participate in helping others, right? Irrespective of what their backgrounds are. And I don't want people to feel afraid to join in. Like, can I go speak at a Women in Tech forum? Even though I'm a dude, right? Is it welcome? And I think the answer is yes.
100%, definitely.
I want others to participate.
Yeah, I would love that. And I think I can appreciate why it might feel intimidating as someone who identifies as male to walk into what feels like a female space and be like, I've come to talk to you all about a cybersecurity career. I can totally appreciate why that might be intimidating. But that's why we're all allies. And that's why we advocate for each other. It isn't about you having to be the same gender or sexuality or religion or from the same socioeconomic background. It's about us all helping each other, because that's then when we're going to keep on top of the threat. And that's when we're going to create beautiful professionals who do incredible things. That's why we all have each other's back.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just an observation. So I remember when... I remember the days before the internet that as we understand it, right? I'm not talking about the ARPA and DARPANET. I'm talking about sort of the internet as of the early 90s forward. And I remember being struck because I had a coffee chat that I joined. My wife and I joined, and literally I could be chatting with someone from China through Australia at the same time, right? They're all in different times all across the world, but we're literally talking about children. Like raising kids and problems with teenagers and all the stuff. And it was universal, right? I mean, it's sort of the same thing struck me when I looked at, ancient Greek writings. It's very like they're all dealing with the same shit, like, angry teenagers rebelling against parents, like problems raising children, arguments with your spouse. But as much evil that comes from this connectivity, it is still a very unifying capability. And I do think it's, again, good people need to participate and sort of and share the positivity in those communities as well. At least, otherwise, the evil will win.
Yeah, it's very important to give back. One other organization I'll give a shout out to, actually, with that in mind, is Cyber Girls. So they help young girls and young women in Africa to understand cybersecurity, to train them up so that they can then help not only protect their communities and to protect Africa as a nation, but that then they can go obviously on to have fantastic careers. And I know that they're looking for mentors and support right now. So if that is something that would interest you, I know that Confident Stably is looking for help. And again, that's a lovely way in a global scale to give back and help make a difference.
Yeah. And it's so important because, I looked at, the believe it or not, drone technology is exploding in Rwanda. out of necessity. Like you have to reach medical supplies to outlying hospitals. There are no roads, right? So they develop clever ways of employing drones to deliver drugs and blood. And now the innovation is exploding, right? It's opening economic venues in areas of the world that have been left behind in a lot of respects. And so, absolutely, I think the audience needs to know about these forums and be able to participate for good. There's a far more evil in the world, and I don't want to add to it, right? So we want to
exactly that.
We want to connect with people to know that there's others out there that can help. So, what else, Rebecca? What's next? When you see the next 3-4 years, what's in it for you personally, and what's in it for the cyber world? You're looking at it from the threat intelligence perspective. You're a knowledge manager. Give us some knowledge. What do we see coming up in the next 2 years?
That's a big question. Give us some knowledge.
Of course, give us knowledge.
Personally, I hope that cyber agony arts continue to grow and to make a difference. We've got the next book coming out in April 2026. So I just hope it continues to help. And I'd like to do more giving back in that way, connecting with people, bringing them together for free, so that there isn't that financial barrier as well, which I think a lot of people are struggling with the way the world is right now. So I'd like that to continue to be a special part of my life. From a threat perspective, I think, unfortunately, because if we think about the way people are being compromised, and if we think about the fact that social engineering and vulnerability exploits continue to be the main way that a lot of these actors are compromising these organizations, I mean, I'd love it if the reality check hit and people were like, you know what? We are going to patch. It's going to be mandatory and we'll never forget. I wish that would happen, but I don't know that it will. I think that we'll start to see AI leveraged, as you would expect, in lots of ways. But I know that's also a buzzword. We see it filtering through into the dark web, into the fact they've got their own versions of AI search engines, and they're building it into how they design phishing emails and testing their own maliciousness. So I think they're just going to become more adept at that, in the same way that we are, in the same way that we're experimenting and using it more successfully to mitigate threats. But I wouldn't be surprised if across the next few years we start to see things like deepfake technology used more to manipulate in terms of financial fraud, that kind of stuff. So like real live time pretend calls where someone thinks they're on like a video call like this talking to their CEO and it's not, and that's used to get some kind of money. They're really the main things that pop out. I think the big thing that concerns me, that I think we need to act on and we all need to be talking about more, is stopping young people from turning to cybercriminality. I think more than ever we're seeing that across the media, in the limelight of these young, particularly men, but there are women falling into cybercrime from a young age. And I think we need to be doing more right from day one to try and prevent. And I think that'll be the next big thing for public and private to collaborate on.
Yeah, the challenge is it's the same problem with the, selling drugs in inner cities, is because it's an economic boom. Like cybercrime, the FBI here in America states that $10.5 trillion in transfer of wealth globally. Like that's an access to capital and gain that most folks would not have in certain regions of the world. What's such a huge draw, and it's really, really a difficult, very, very difficult challenge. But you are right. I do think AI will continue to, and unfortunately, criminals don't care the impact, so they'll use it before defenders. Like, we have to make sure that it's not going to break anything. Criminals will just I don't care.
We have the ethical consideration.
And criminals don't. So I think there's always going to be a little lag there, as far as the employment of those. But I do want people to think about what that means for us as defense. I think the UK is a little ahead of America in you have some recent laws and legislation in the UK that say, AI generated material has to be stamped and identified. I think you call it the, what is it, the AI identification rules, whatnot.
I think so. Yeah.
We don't have such. Our legislature is still arguing about nonsense, but we do. I don't think it'll stop criminals, but it provides at least legitimacy in marketing, and like, I think it takes some of the pressure off of creative of industries where AI is just sort of ripping through them and taking fakes and using it for marketing purposes. So at least you'll know it's illegitimate because it's not marked, right? I mean, and so I think that's
there'll be more of an expectation and a standardization of the practice of how it's used,
right.
For the people that are using it for good, at least.
Right. We're never gonna. Those who are willing to commit crime are criminals by nature. Like, I mean, laws won't stop criminals because criminals have already said, "I'm going to break the law." But it will help good people identify between legitimate and illegitimate things. If everyone who is legitimate is playing by the same rules, it makes identifying that as illegitimate easier. So, which is why I'm a big advocate.
No, I agree.
Last words to you, Rebecca. I thank you for being on and providing your insights and your story. I mean, it's inspirational. If for lots of reasons. For people who are in a non-cyber background who want to reinvent themselves, you've reinvented yourself like 6 times now, or 7 times. It's great for young women who feel they might not be able to get into this field. Clearly, you can, and clearly you can reach people globally. So thank you for all of that effort. But I will leave the last words to you, which is difficult for me because I'm a yammer box.
I suppose my last words to you or to the audience as we go into 2026 is, what are you doing for you? The beauty of cyber is that it moves so fast and that there's always something to learn or to do, or a new threat or a new instant response investigation. But what are you doing personally to look after yourself, to have that downtime, to continue to be resilient? I would encourage you to have a look at that list, see how you're feeling, see what you're doing to help yourself, and start to build in the time and the space you need to make sure you can keep going and fighting the good fight across 2026.
Excellent. Well, that is the last word. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us. And I got you done in under an hour. So I
did very well.